Hi, it's Chris Rides here, your Route to CISO podcast host, and we've got part 2 with Jake Bernardes coming right up.
Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career.
You're one of these people that you've already said that the title isn't so much of a big deal for you. I would imagine that would mean there's probably been times where you've had to maybe take steps in a different direction that most people would think. I don't know whether that you'd say that if you look at your career path, it's a very specific, ladder that goes up. Is there times where you've had to maybe take things that have looked like a step back or a step sideways, or have even been that step back to get you some experience or to get your career moving forward much quicker?
No, definitely. Look, I'm an advocate for trying to be more vulnerable and being transparent these days. So let me talk to them. I went from Signals to Wistic. I was at Wistic for a number of years. Loved the company, loved the product, loved the people. I made a decision at the back end of last year to leave Wistic, which was really hard and probably felt like the wrong thing to do in retrospect. I should learn from it. But I went to a company called Gutsy, who came from the guys that had raised a massive seed round. Business looked amazing, really exciting. I got offered quite a significant increase in compensation to come across and did so. And after 6 weeks, it didn't work out, right? They didn't have the business requirement they thought they'd have for me. Things hadn't escalated in the way that they expected them to. They wanted to go back and reconsider the product and said, look, we don't really have a role for you anymore. So I kind of made this big jump, this big gamble. And now 6 weeks later was like, I've got no job. So luckily I was about to go to the Maldives anyway on holiday. So I went and took some time, and then look, I'd already been a customer and an advisor at Anecdotes for a number of years, twice customer and also an advisor. And I messaged her. I had a CISO at the time, Esther Pinto, who's a good friend of mine and a great security leader as well, and kind of a figure and definitely a voice in the industry. I said, look, I want to come and work for you. I think we can try and find a way to make this make sense. And to his credit, similar to the conversation we had before, wanted to bring me on board and try and find a way to make it work. So look, I can't hire you as a CISO. I've got a CISO. But I can make you a field CISO. We have a problem with developing pipe and going to market. Like, I think you understand the audience that we're selling to, and you understand a lot of these people, your friends and peers, like, work out how to deliver that more. And so for me, I took that role in a completely different world. I have never been in a world where I was part of a go-to-market motion. It was always accidental and inadvertent on the side, and it was great. But this was like, right, I now have to work out how do you actually deliver this product? Like, what are we doing? What should we be doing more of? What are we saying? What are we saying wrongly or rightly? Like, how do we get in the right rooms? How do we resonate? And a lot of those conversations in the last 6 or 7 months before I then moved, after Esther left about a month ago and I moved into the CISO role as well, I probably learned more in that last 6 months than I did in the last 5 years of my career, because it was a completely new world. When I first got here, after about a month, Yair and myself looked at each other, probably more Yair, and was thinking, is this really going to work? Because I'm not sure what we're getting from this, right? I'm not the cheapest person in the world. Is this delivering? And again, for me, that was a moment of vulnerability and kind of transparency, where you have to look at yourself and go, what do I need to learn and what can I do? And I think that firstly, that kind of re-solidified my views on kind of business outcomes and how we deliver as part of a company's success versus just being a function side of it. It helped me learn a whole new skill sets about what it's like to be sold to and to sell, and how to market effectively, how to resonate and how to speak to people. Definitely learned a whole new world of tenacity that I'm sure you probably know in recruitment as well as the salespeople do, but it's not usual for security people. Having so many doors shut in your face over and over again repeatedly. So I think, look, I went sideways then and always kind of figured if I wasn't going to become the CISO Anecdotes over time, if Esther stayed in role, which she could well have done, there was no assumption on my part, then I was going to look for another CISO role again, probably next year. But I wanted to take that sideways step first because I wanted to work for the company that I wanted to work for. And partly because once I got there, it meant I was learning a huge amount of skills that I just don't think you can do anywhere else. I now have this logic that says that, look, in security and SaaS, we're three-headed CISOs. I know we both have a shared mate, Andy Smeaton, who talks about this a lot, that you are internal security, you're external security, and you're an external brand. And I think that in our world, that's really common. But I think that CISOs everywhere who sit inside of healthcare businesses, retailers, industry, like manufacturers, should go and sit in different parts of the business, predominantly in go-to-market functions, and understand how this stuff works. It's invaluable. It gave me lessons that I don't think you can learn anywhere else.
Yeah, so I think it was at InfoSec World, Larry, Whiteside Jr. and Andy Smeaton, and there was another gentleman, trying to think who was on, but they were talking about being a CISO at a product company. Nick Bruno, of course it was. Yeah. Oh, Nick's going to kill me for not remembering that. I was literally texting with him this week.
Luckily I did.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully he doesn't watch this one. Otherwise that's going to be really awkward. Yeah. So they were talking about that difficulty of like being a CISO at a product company and how it's viewed. I don't know whether it's within other CISOs, but certainly I know a lot of the Evantas and stuff like cut people off really quick, right? Once they were a product CISO and a service provider CISO, it's almost like they stopped getting invited to a lot of things. I don't know whether they've worked a little bit more on that. And I know a lot of the CISO society doesn't do that sort of stuff. But have you felt that like being a CISO at a product company a little bit excluded at all, or a change in how people treated you?
I've been in both. So I've been a CISO at a product company. And I've been a field CISO, which is even worse. Like that's like proper, like put the leper bell on. And I think there's two sides to it. Like if you look at the vendor CISO to begin with, we've probably got more pressure on a security element than normal CISOs do. If you're a security vendor and you get breached, you're basically done. So like there is definitely more pressure on our internal security. Our internal security is probably better than most other orgs. We're probably nearer to the bleeding edge than anyone else is because we have to be. So there's a lack of respect and understanding for that, I think, number one. I think the second one is there's nothing wrong with having a voice. Like I know guys who are very senior in other companies, car companies, clothing companies, airlines. They're forever pitching me their stuff. Like I don't get offended and like tell them to get lost and never talk to me again. Like we have this weird, I think it's hard down to maybe the personalities of security, but people have this thing that if you try and sell to them like you're the devil. I'm like, I offer you anecdotes because I think the product's damn good. I was a customer before. If you don't want it, you don't need it, or you want to go to Drada or Vanta or Audit Board or Hyperproof somebody else, fine. I don't care. We'll talk again in 2 years if you want to. We'll never talk about it again ever again. But we'll still be mates. Like there's this weird thing that like, why are you saying this? Why are you wanting to talk to me? Who doesn't want to sell the product of the company they work for? Like guys work for Nike, love Nikes. Like they tell you all the time that why are you wearing Adidas, wear Nikes. I did some work with Maui Jim and I still do some advisory work with Maui Jim. You walk into Maui Jim with a pair of Ray-Bans, they take them and give you a pair of Maui Jims. Like no one gets pissed at them and how's it go with them? Like that's fine. So I think that's, and then the speaking thing is the other one. Like I do a lot of speaking and I think I'm a credible voice with a style that's interactive and interesting. I'm a storyteller. That's what my kind of life is. But the amount of times that certain vendors or certain events will say, oh, you're a vendor, so you can speak, but your company will have to sponsor it. I'm like, I'm not speaking about my product. I'm going to hack people live on stage. It's social engineering. It's nothing to do with what we do. Yeah, but you're a vendor. Like, I'm not going to pitch anecdotes in anything. I'll sign you a contract. No, you're a vendor. You have to sponsor. Like, that's where it gets annoying. I'm like, look, some of us have voices that are completely separate from our companies. Why do you pigeonhole on like this and try and force into like, it's almost like you realize there's therefore a chance to sell something and make some money. It's like the flip side, the irony is like in there that they're exploiting the fact that they think you're exploiting them. So yeah, I'm passionate about this. I think, look, if you're a CISO, you're a CISO. If you're a field CISO, you still have to, field CISOs probably should all be backgrounded from being a CISO and a security professional. So you all understand this world. If you want to pitch your product, people have the right to either say no or not. But so a lot of the conversations I've had have ended up with people buying and being very happy with the products I've talked to them about because they were already my friends and they knew that we take care of them in a way that we probably didn't we probably take care of every customer the same, but theoretically, right? So no, it's a bugbear of mine. I think it's something we need to fix in the industry, but I think it's down to the CISOs and not down to the vendors. Avant maybe removed by themselves. I think they have a specific thing around revenue numbers, which is quite hard if you're not like $1 billion or 10 million, whatever the number, I can't remember what the number is now in ARR. I think it's $1 billion. So it's very hard to get into, but I think, yeah, we need to get better as people in saying, I have a problem with someone telling me about their product. Like Andy, great example. Jamf. He can tell me all he wants about Jamf. I might buy it. I don't know. But until he tells me about it, I don't really know, right? I think that's the same with a lot of these things. Like you just got to be more comfortable with these personal relationships that say, I'm all right with you telling me, because our relationship is strong enough that if I don't want you to listen, I'll say no and I'll tell you to go away.
Yeah. I find that difficult because I've been in the industry for so long, and I get invited. I've had people, because I guess we've had a virtual CISO, offering for 10 years now, and that's in part of my profile. I'm not a virtual CISO, but I get invited to CISO events, and then I have to explain to them that I'm not actually a virtual CISO, I'm a recruiter. And then they're like, you're a service provider. And then but then they ask for what this is the strange thing I get, is that they might ask for me to sponsor. Like, I'm a small company, I'm not going to be spending 10 grand on a booth. Like, that's just not going to happen, right? But then they're like, oh, well, he's got quite a lot of followers on LinkedIn. Well, maybe you can speak, and maybe, so I think the whole world goes around like that. What is in it for me? And if you work for a company that you believe in, I started my company because I believed in it. I totally have no doubt that we're the best recruitment company. And I've got a whole bunch of friends that probably use other recruitment companies. Now, at some point, things won't work out or something won't go right. And they might say, Chris, like, can we give you a go on this? Will you come and have a pop at this? And I believe that we can find stuff that other people absolutely won't find. And that's the belief I've got, but I'm not going to shove it down their throat. Like, hopefully they know what I do and they'll come to me and talk to me about it. But, that's what you hope. You hope that you're not putting it on them, right?
We need more diversity. I go to ISSA events, ISACA events, CISO Society events. Why is it always CISOs? I want recruiters in the room. I want you to tell me, Jake, I've got a great opportunity you might be interested in. I might not have had that conversation otherwise, unless we were sitting like at a bar somewhere. I have no problem with salespeople in the room, because they're learning about how CISOs talk and think, and that's beneficial to them to make them better salespeople, to sell me products more effectively. I have definitely no problem with field CISOs in the room, because they're the ones that are like have industry knowledge and expertise and ability to speak. Like, I don't have a problem with product people. Like, we have this thing where we've become very elite. I said it comes back down to me again for the fact we've risen to fame very quickly, and we're a super elitist group where it's like, if you're not a CISO, you're not a CISO. I'm like that's not what it should be. Like, we should have more diversity, not just of like traditional diversity, but diversity of roles, of backgrounds, of ways of thinking, because that makes the whole thing more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny, over the 10 years, 12 years of having the business, if I think I've seen people's careers completely change from when I first met them, and I've seen their personalities change as their titles have gone up as well. People that you'd have really good relationships with, and you'd helped them and not just help them from my business point of view, not just got them their next job, but help them or made recommendations or stuff that I've not worked on, said, look, I know somebody that's there, let me put a good word in for you. Doesn't help my business, but I'm going to do that for you. And I've seen those same people whose careers have risen, and then they're the people that then when I reach out to them and to speak to them, I don't hear back. Right? You just don't hear anything back for them. And then the crazy thing is they then get laid off, and all of a sudden they're replying to messages you sent 6 months ago. Right. So, it is tough, but I guess you get to see who's in it to actually be a pal of yours and actually likes you, and who's in it for exactly what they want to get. And there's a big difference in both of those things. So, yeah, it's interesting. I went to a group session from an AI company, a security AI company, and I got invited, and I was the only non-CISO in the room. And I felt, and their feedback was that I felt like I had better product and better discussions with them, where a lot of the CISOs were like, just, oh no, I wouldn't agree with that. Don't think we could do that. I was like listening to them and said, well, you know what? There's other product cases for what you do. I know it within the businesses. Now, I might not be a buyer, but I might be able to push you down different directions because I'm in it. I'm coming from a different place. And the company that arranged that have asked me to come and do a couple of other ones of those. So yeah, I think having diversity in the room is super important. And yeah, when you've just got sort of the same CISOs all in there coming from the same background, you're probably not getting what you need from it from a business point of view. So I agree.
Yeah, that's what makes some of them work, right? If you look at, like, we talk about the CISO Society, and Jason is a good friend of mine and a friend of yours. Like, he's not technical or security backgrounded, and what makes him good in a room is he sits and asks questions and no one else asks, because he's literally genuinely going, I don't understand what you're on about. Like, does that make sense, or does that apply here, or would that apply to you? And like, those questions provoke discussion and thought, whereas the rest of us often will sit there and have the exact same thought track running in our brains, and therefore it becomes a bit dead.
Yeah, I get this. He's probably like me. We're not CISOs, so we're not scared to ask a question that might make us seem dumb, right, or silly. And so we ask that question, and then you notice that actually there's a few other people around that intently listening to the answer, because I suspect they didn't really get what was happening there either. And
That's a whole different topic, right? And I think one of the things that's interesting, we talked about like the CISO and the title, is that our role is now becoming so broad, like it's madness. Like I've never seen in my tenure as being in security, I've never seen any other role that like got so broad. I've never seen a sales guy, like a CRO suddenly inherit HR. Like, but we inherited IT. And then we'll inherit, like, I've inherited SRE teams before who were like actually keeping products up and live, like product teams, like no one else in the business seems to inherit functions and features and broaden their scope quite at the speed and I suppose broad reaching ways that a CISO and security leader does. And there is, again, maybe this is an elitist thing. People are terrified of not knowing. Like I sit in lots of CISO rooms and I've done it occasionally just for pure jokes where I've used acronyms that aren't real acronyms just to see if anyone actually questions them. And they never do. Whereas I sit there all the time and I'll sit in these things and go, I'm sorry, mate, maybe this is really common sense, but I don't come from that. I don't come from that specific background. I have no idea what you're on about. Like, I don't know what that acronym means. And I think you've just got to be not afraid to realize that you're paid to be a problem solver, as I said. You're not paid to know everything. And our range of knowledge is now so broad and shallow that you have to be willing to be vulnerable and ask questions and say, I don't know. I think that's one of the things that makes a great leader, not just security, but a great leader, is being willing to say, hire great people who know more than you and then not be afraid to know less than them and ask the questions and say, I don't know what you're on about. Because that's the only way you learn.
Yep. Yeah. It's got to be, it's all about sort of that personal development front. And if you're willing to be open, then you'll be constantly developing rather than feeling that you're already at the top and you can't ask those questions because it reflects poorly. Yeah. I like that. I like looking back on your career, like, has there been sort of major turning points where you've had to make decisions like that were tough ones to make? I mean, obviously you've done the travels, you've done this sort of stuff, but were there major things where you said that if I point at that, when I did that, that was a big move for me and it made a proper hockey stick change? And we might have already covered it because I know you've done the big jumps to move abroad, right?
I don't think they're all hockey sticks, but points at which you've got, like you pinpoint to this taught me or this grew me a lot. The first time I took the role at Single Store where I left consulting, I felt woefully and probably was woefully underprepared and inexperienced to do that job. Super complex product they were selling to, they wanted to sell a cloud product to banks. They didn't have a security policy at the time. So I was well out of my depth, but took it on the basis that I figured I could work it out along the way and just stay one step ahead effectively of what the requirements were. So I think that was a big one. And then actually inside of that role, not just taking that kind of, I'll take the leave and work out later, but then working it out. The hockey stick comes from actually keeping up with the trajectory that you have to set yourself. I think the second one, when I left Wistic, it was super hard. I'm not still to this day sure it was the right thing that I did or not. But it put me in a position where I then ended up taking the field CISO role, which then put me into the company that I'm now at in Anecdotes for holding a CISO role, which I love the product, the company, and the people in a way that I haven't for a long time. And I feel excited about what we do. And I think so sometimes we make right decisions that lead to great growth. And sometimes we make what could have been wrong decisions, but equally it's what happens afterwards and what you do with that defines like where you take it from your career. I think, those are probably, and the other one for me is like, we talked about earlier, but back at KPMG, when I came in kind of almost like a semi-financial role, I decided to just dive straight into pen testing because I felt I could probably work it out and do it. For me, that was another massive one where I sit back and go, I've taken a lot of gambles in my life, but most of them have paid off. I've been lucky to date, but you have to be willing to take risks.
Yeah. There's a situation where I think at some point you've just got to make a decision. Like not making a decision is the worst decision you can make, and you're still making one at that point, right? Make a decision, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But even if you learn from it, it's worked out in some way. And I think those people that just don't make ones are the ones that tend to fall between the cracks.
It's every lesson in between. Our VP of HR, Yara, is like, she's a really good friend of mine. She says I'm impulsive because I act sometimes before I think, and it's probably right. But like, I think it's better to be impulsive, make the mistake, apologize, and learn than it is to not act. I think you have to act and do something, and then the consequences are either successful or they're not. But in both cases, you learn and progress, whereas you don't get anywhere from just not doing anything.
Well, hopefully the impulsive decision to say yes to speak on the Route to CISO podcast won't be a bad one.
Always a pleasure to be time with you.
Now, are there CISOs that you respect and people out there you think are doing a great job that you want to give a shout out to? Maybe I can bug them to get them on here if they haven't been on already.
You can tag them that way. That's the best way to bug them.
Yes.
One who's near and dear to my heart that I had on my podcast, Adam Arellano. Was advisor traceable, been involved in multiple VCs, was at PayPal for a long time. I think he's everything right with security. Speaks about diversity in a way that other people don't, says the things that other people are scared to say, isn't afraid to be vulnerable, to be transparent, and to say what he thinks. And I think there is a credibility in his way and personality that you can't teach. And I think that is tremendously impactful on the industry. I think that's number one. I think our shared friend, Mr. Smeaton, Andrew Smeaton, CISO at Jamf, big one. I think if you look at like some of his questionable activities in like rescuing people from war zones or trying to get people out of war zones, makes the man, right? It shows a personal nature and a family mentality inside of a team and a culture, which again you can't teach that in people. You either do or you don't. I think there's a great characteristic in that. And then, I mean, I keep going here. Mandy Andres at Elastic. I've done a number of like advisory gigs with her. I think she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And her, again, way in kind of setting and charting a course for what it means to be a female in our world. And I think that's really powerful and impactful. And then I think from my background, my previous CTO at Wistic, Juan Rodriguez, not a security leader, but a security-minded guy, definitely. Again, fantastic technical mind, great way to trust and lead people. One of the best leaders I've worked for. So I think those are probably my kind of few picks, but it could change in a few months' time. Who knows? There are people right now.
Well, there are people I can at least tag in and start bugging. I've been bugging Andy from season 1. I've been trying to get him on. It's like getting down a time with him.
He's a difficult man to pin down.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, well, he says yes. That's the worst thing. It's not like he's saying no. He says yes. He says yes, and then we try and organise a time, and we never seem to get it together. Hopefully later on this season. That's the plan.
There you go.
What are the attributes that you see in those people? What are the things? If I said what are the top 3 things you see in those that really stand out to you?
I suppose fearlessness across all of them, whether that is being your real self in Adam's case, not being afraid of external factors or opinions in Mandy's case, or being willing to back your mouth with your actions in Andy's case. I think fearlessness is one. I think the second is honesty and reality. We talked at the beginning, I think even before we came online, about like being your true self. And those are 3 people who I know who they are. They're the same people on a podcast that they are in a pub, that they are in a board meeting. I've never sat in a board meeting with them, I presume. I think that is something, again, like we talked about, people like trying to assume this role, and when they get too big for their boots, they forget who their people are. I think that's one, being your true self. And I think the third is actual knowledge and expertise. All 3 of them have really deep subject matter expertise across a broad range of things, and in each case, some very specific things. But that gives you credibility to speak and a credibility to be heard. So I would say fearlessness, honesty and reality of personality, and knowledge and expertise are the ones in those summing up. And then I said, when I talked about one who was the non-security kind of out of left field from my previous organization, I think it's that ability to build and foster a culture of trust and of love. And I think that's something I've taken with me in my career. And I think I certainly feel the same at Anecdotes in our leadership, that you kind of have that, you look for places that then foster that in the future, and you try and foster it yourself, that your teams and your workplaces feel like families. They don't feel like businesses.
Yeah, when you were talking about that I was actually going to specifically bring that up, because I've always been a believer that I want to feel like I work in a place that's a family. And recently I've seen it's like almost become like a bad word. It's like, well, like if it's family, it's like an abuse. It's taken advantage like a family member. And that is not how it's been for me at other places I've worked. And I've been lucky enough to get texts. I was only texting with somebody that I brought into recruitment 7 years ago maybe, and taught completely, and he's now in he's been working for a number of years at some really big companies in talent acquisition, and he out of the blue like literally sent me a message and said, Chris, I always remember us talking about working as being part of a family, and I want to say thank you. And he's like, he would talk to me about his relationship stuff, and like he's now married to that person. He's just sent me a picture of his little baby girl that he's had, and it's like, I don't know why people are so down on this family chat, because I don't know, my family's amazing, so maybe it's that as an aspect of it, but I want to work somewhere where I genuinely really love the people.
Yeah, and I think it's this like fear that I think you talk about the exploitation aspect, right? That when it's your family, you feel like you can ask anything of them, people ask anything of them. But I think it comes down to trust, right? I think with your family, the same with you've got kids and I've got kids, like you get to that point where you push them off a cliff and they have to learn to fly because you can't keep feeding them mouth to mouth like mother birds do. And I think that's part of the family aspect, right? Great leaders succeed by their teams becoming too good to work for them. Like the best leaders have to find people like you to get new jobs for their people because they now need my job. Like that's what real leadership means. And I think beyond that also, real leaders, a proper CISO, when they leave the company keeps on moving. You almost don't notice they left because they built everything in such a way that it maintains itself. And that's family. It's that fact that you've got this flat structure where everyone knows what they're doing, but everyone helps and pitches into each other anyway, and has those emotional and personal connections where you know their kids' names and you take the time to learn about their lives. And on your one-on-ones, you don't just ask what they're doing this week, but you ask like, what happened to you this week? Or what's going on with your wife? Like, what's going on with your daughter? Like, those are the kind of things that I think we're missing. And I think it's weird. We're in a super woke world. I don't want to be too political, but we're like, yeah. But at the same time, we've almost like seemed to have forgotten. We're now obsessed with how we interact personally, but we've almost forgotten like how to interact personally. Like it's okay to have a chat. It's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to talk about things. Everyone's too scared to say what they think in case they offend somebody or get cancelled. And like, I don't know. I'm on a bit of a rant, but yeah, I agree. Families have to exist inside of workplaces outside because we spend so much time together and we go through such difficult times together that you have to have that feeling.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, maybe we're both going to be cancelled here. Who knows?
I've been cancelled by now for sure if I was going to get cancelled anytime soon.
Yeah, welcome to the last episode of the Route to CISO podcast. All right, so I want to ask just about a couple of other areas, and this is sort of new really for this season. I asked previously about people standing out to hiring managers. You've been a hiring manager for a long time, and people have asked me to ask a few more sort of questions specifically around that. So to dig in a bit more specifically, you've been a hiring manager, you've seen a lot of resumes, probably as many as me, maybe even, but what are the things when you're looking to hire somebody on that piece of paper, when you get that and it comes through, what are the things that make you keep looking at? What are the things that turn that piece of paper into an interview request, regardless of role?
One page. Stars.
Okay.
It's got to be visually attractive. I don't want to to look at this like bland like paragraphs of text. I want something that you've taken time to focus on. Even if some of the subject areas are irrelevant, I also want to put like reading as a hobby and put themselves 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know what that means. But you gave some time to make something that at least attractive. I've remembered it, right? So it must have done something. But I think the key is for each role, I don't need a paragraph on what you did. I need 3 things that show you were good at what you did. So and I need metrics that show it. So if you're going to say, right, I'm going to hire as your GRC analyst, right? I want to know in your last company, you're a GRC analyst. Why do I care? I matured SOC 2 from being 84% compliant to 95% compliance out of 3 months with no extra budget spent. Great, tick. I implemented PCI DSS that we'd never done before, and I led the implementation and got us to successful pass in our first time. Tick. Like I also helped work with sales to develop a trust center, which facilitated greater volumes of sales and reduce the sales cycle by 6 days. Tick. Fine. I don't care what the rest of the stuff you did. Like I don't care about that company. So I think that's what if the resume's got to be 1 page, it's got to be visually attractive, it's got to be clear and concise in metrics that show that you are good at what you did.
Love that. And you're the first person for me to ask this question, so I'm excited to continue to ask each person because I think everybody's going to have their own individual, but Definitely. Some of the stuff you're talking about there is certainly things that we see. You know, when I had a 12-page resume last week sent to me, and
I'm not reading it. If it's 12
no,
pages, I'm not reading it. You're done.
And I tried to have this conversation with the person. It was such a difficult conversation. It shouldn't be. I said, have you got another resume for me to look at? Something that's a bit more concise? No, I've done a lot of consulting over the years. This is, and all I was thinking, this is going to be so difficult for me to pitch into a company, even though from my conversation, I actually think you've got a lot of these skills that they're actually looking for. Clearly being able to write concisely isn't one of them. So that might be a big hiccup, even though that's not on the job description, because I think that's a standard thing that people actually require.
But you can get better at that, right? If you've had multiple jobs, great. Put consultant, multiple companies, details on request, and then tell me 3 to 5 things that you've done in those last 2 years at like 10 companies that was worth me learning about.
Yeah, and relevant.
were. I'm not going to ask about every company. I just care what you did.
Yeah, what you did, what was relevant to this specific position, right?
Exactly.
You've got the job description there. Like, absolutely, should you be doing a new resume for pretty much every role you go for? I'm a believer of yes, because you should have so much experience that you want to bring out different things for that role. So
that, and something that makes, like, you might, and lots of recruiters tell people, don't put like personal hobbies or that kind of crap onto a resume, right? And I get it, but part of me, I'm a human, and I remember random things. So I remember on a resume, if someone put, I'm into skydiving. Like, I don't know what the rest of the resume said, but I remember you're into skydiving, right?
Yeah.
And I think those random little tidbits that come in there that you almost subconsciously dropping into my mind, they come back. You might not be the best qualified person for the job, but you might have had a more interesting resume. And that's why I had the conversation with you when I only fit 10 interviews in. I decided to talk to you because you said you were a Liverpool fan and I don't like Liverpool. So I thought I'd talk to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's that kind of piece. Definitely resumes is like, and I agree wholeheartedly that when I see a resume, I'm like, this was clearly a resume used to apply for enterprise security companies who had like 30 to 50 people like teams. And you clearly haven't thought about this before you sent it to me.
Yep. Yeah, I'm one that totally, well, within reason, I'm totally one that tells people to keep on that personal stuff. You've got to be memorable, right? Oh, people will probably not remember your name, but they might remember if he or she was a skydiver, right? Or who was that skydiver person's resume that we had? Can you have a look? Skydiving. Oh yeah, that was the one, right? So there are definitely elements of stuff like that you should make personal. Otherwise, you're just the same as everybody else. Right. So standing out a bit, I think, is important as well. So that's good. And then let's say they get through to an interview. What's the things that's going to stand out when they get that opportunity?
I think you've got to do, we always talk about research, but I think research is like, I don't want you to read the company's website. Like, I want you to have done some real research. So like, I've had people before who have like gone through my background and asked me questions. I've been like, oh, that's impressive. Or even more impressive, I've had people before who have gone and spoke to people who I know and have worked with previously. And have then come away really prepared. Like, they're not asking about the company or its problems, they're asking about me. And I'm like, you've clearly shown some effort, even if it's not relevant or always right. Like, you've shown some effort. I think that's number one. I think number two is working out what you're good at. Like, people come and they just want to prove they're a security generalist. I don't need generalists. Like, I need someone who's got a superpower. The rest of it I can teach you. And then the real fundamental one, and this is specific to security, I need you to solve problems. I don't care what experience you have. I don't care if you've got no experience whatsoever. If I can stick you in a hack the box, you might have no pen testing experience, but I bet you can probably work out some of it, because that's just, do you have the mindset to solve problems, and can you deal with stress and pressure? Like, I've got to a point, I think I've told you this before, but I got to a point where JDs are great, job descriptions, but sometimes I'm like, if it's not working, like, I'll go and introduce them to someone who I know, who I have, who's really good, or I know is really good, and say, go and find me a person like that. I don't know how to write a job description, but that's the person I want. So I think that's part of it in interviews. Like, how do you have that skill set to quickly identify what I'm looking for, and then to play up to it, almost like to make that your superpower? So I know that's a meandering thought, but I suppose if you condense it into one, what makes someone good in an interview? They're authentic, they understand what they're good at, and they understand what you want from them.
Yeah, what you're describing is sales, right? There's a big element of sales there. If you can understand people's needs and requirements, and then you sell your skill set to those needs and requirements, you're going to do way better in an interview, because you're being specific and making sure that they know under no hesitation when they finish that interview, this person can do those exact things that they're looking for.
And forget getting hired, let's talk promotions. You want to get promoted, ask your boss, what does he care about? Give me 3 things that you care about, and if I deliver, ask him directly, I want a promotion or a raise, whatever it is. Then go and deliver those 3 things. Like, that's the same in a recruitment. You sit in an interview and say, Jake, what are 3 things that you need right now in the role you're hiring for? And I'll tell you. And if they say, this is how I can deliver 1, 2, and 3, there's a good chance I'm going to say, fine, let's give it a go. Like, it's that level of kind of transparency, and it's salesman skills, like being able to identify what the issue is and fill the gap. Yeah.
When I think of CISOs that are doing a great job, like, a lot of them are asking those questions. They're asking the stakeholders, what do you need me to do? What can I deliver you from a security point of view that will make your job easier? Or what are you targeted to deliver? Right, now let's work out what I need to deliver to you so that you can hit that bonus or do whatever you need to do. Brilliant. Okay, so last question for you. I'm going to end it on this one. If you could go back to your early career self and give Jake a bit of advice, what would be the piece of advice you'd give yourself?
I think I give myself something which I did follow. I think I tell myself to take risks as soon as they came, because that's retrospectively what got me to where I am. But then at the same time, I tell myself to think through those risks. I think at times I've dug my own graves in times when I've kind of been overly impulsive and just thought and acted and then kind of apologized later, which I think is the nature of an inherent disruptive characteristic I have, but like at the same time can be equally risky. So I think take risks, but think through those risks before you take them.
Calculate them a little bit more.
Be more calculated than I probably have been historically, yes.
Well, it's all worked out very well.
It's worked out, but it could have gone a completely different direction.
Good stuff. Well, look, thank you so much. I know it's a big chunk of time that you've given to me, and I appreciate you finding it as well, especially as we move things out about a few bits as we played about with new software. So hopefully this recording's nice and tight. And I thank you so much, mate. Jake, I appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Hopefully there's some useful tidbits you can roll out with, and hopefully we don't get cancelled. But no, it's always a pleasure, mate. I enjoy your company.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.